During World War II, the U.S. military faced a deadly problem. It wasn't enemy fire. It was rain, rot, and time. Then, in a warehouse in Rhode Island, engineers built something no one had ever seen before, a building that could be shipped in a box, assembled by untrained soldiers in hours, and survive everything from typhoons to bombs. What began as an emergency project would go on to house millions and inspire buildings even on Mars. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns, the Pacific erupts in flames, and within 72 hours the United States military faces a crisis no admiral had ever prepared for. It isn't about ships or planes. It's about roofs. Across the Pacific, from the Philippines to Wake Island, American troops sleep under canvas tents that melt in tropical rain. Within weeks, the shelters rot, collapse, and vanish into the mud. Reports flood Washington, flooded depots, ruined ammunition, soldiers coughing up blood after their tents disintegrate in the monsoon. The War Department's briefings turn grim. This isn't just discomfort. It's a logistics nightmare that could cripple the entire Pacific campaign. Wooden barracks? Impossible. They take weeks to build and require lumber that doesn't exist on coral atolls. The Navy calculates 18 months to build enough wooden housing. The war won't wait that long. Brigadier General Eugene Raybould stands before maps of the Pacific, surrounded by engineers, trying to solve an impossible equation. They need buildings that can be made in Pennsylvania, shipped 10,000 miles, assembled by exhausted Marines, and survive typhoons, monsoons, and enemy bombs. The Army's standard tent costs $12 and lasts a month. A wooden barracks costs $8,000 and takes 6 weeks. Neither works when 50,000 men need shelter right now. But there's one clue. The British, veterans of North Africa, have something called the Quonset Hut. Lot shoes stuck shoes. A British idea meets the Pacific problem. Invented during World War I by Canadian engineer Peter Nissen, these semicircular steel huts were tough, fast, and could be built by untrained soldiers. They laughed at sandstorms, but not at tropical rain. The Nissen huts used heavy steel, poor ventilation, and needed concrete foundations. Perfect for Libya, disastrous for the jungle. Raybould's engineers run the math. 2 million men will need shelter across hundreds of islands. At normal construction speed, the war will end before half the troops have roofs. Letters home tell the story. Men waking with boots full of rainwater. Fungus growing overnight on uniforms. Tents collapsing in the storm, while soldiers crawl through the mud at 3 a.m. Respiratory infections are sending more men to hospitals than enemy fire. Shelter has become a weapon, and America doesn't have one. So the War Department sends out an extraordinary challenge. Design a building that weighs less than a Jeep, ships flat, needs no foundation, can be assembled in a single day, costs under $1,000, and survives everything the Pacific can throw at it. Deadline: 6 months. Rhode Island, February 1942, The Impossible Assignment. At Quonset Point, Rhode Island, a new naval air station on Narragansett Bay, a team of engineers gathers in an empty warehouse. Among them, Otto Brandenburgers from Strand Steel, Commander John Drosfeld from the Navy, and architects from George A. Fuller Construction. Their mission: take the flawed British design and make it work for war in the tropics. They study the Nissen blueprint, 16 feet wide, corrugated iron, bolted to wood. The shape is genius, an arch that deflects wind and sheds water naturally. But everything else? Wrong for the Pacific. The steel is too heavy. The wood frame rots. The ventilation turns the hut into a sauna. Drosfeld circles the ventilation specs in red ink and mutters, "This thing would cook men alive in the Philippines." Then another idea enters the room, indirectly, from an eccentric architect named Buckminster Fuller. Fuller's Dymaxion house, a prefabricated, lightweight, factory-made home, had been dismissed as utopian nonsense. But now, with war raging, his philosophy: treat buildings like manufactured products, not construction projects, suddenly makes perfect sense. So the Navy adopts it. and Quonset Point becomes the birthplace of the Quonset Hut, the American answer to the Nissen. Designing the unthinkable. March 1942, the team works around the clock, sleeping on cots beside drafting tables. They have 60 days to design, prototype, and test a building that doesn't exist. Traditional blueprints take weeks. They don't have weeks, so they build directly. Sketch, cut, test, repeat. Each failure becomes a lesson. Each night brings a new version. They number every part, record every test, and refine every bolt. It's rapid prototyping, decades before Silicon Valley would make it famous. The key insight comes early. No internal frame. The steel skin itself will bear the load. It's radical. Architects say it's impossible. But Brandenburger's farm barns back home, built with self-supporting arches, have survived tornadoes. He knows the math works. The new hut will be 16 feet wide, 48 feet long, and 7 feet high at the walls, big enough for 36 men. Each panel must weigh under 50 pounds, so 4 soldiers can lift it. They experiment endlessly with curvature. Too flat, the wind will tear it apart. Too steep, no space inside. After 2 weeks of calculations, they settle on a perfect semicircle. An 8-foot radius arch. From theory to steel. By late May, the prototype stands in the warehouse, a patchwork of riveted panels and hopeful engineering. 6 sailors assemble it after a 4-hour briefing. 14 hours later, the hut stands complete. Good, but not good enough. They need 1-day construction. The problem? The floor. It slows everything down and rots fast in the jungle. So they remove it entirely. Let the hut sit directly on coral, dirt, or sand. That single decision cuts assembly time in half and reduces the weight by 1/200 pounds. On to June 10, 1942, the final prototype is complete. 96 galvanized steel panels, 720 square feet of space. Total weight, 9,000 pounds. The Navy tests it mercilessly. Testing the arch near Rhode Island, March 1943. A nor'easter hits with 75-mile-an-hour winds. The hut flexes 2 inches at the crown and returns to shape. No leaks, no cracks. Then comes the tropical test, Panama Canal zone, high humidity, 85% year-round. 6 months later, the hut is still standing, corrosion minimal, but the interior rains condensation at night. Engineers add ventilation louvers along the ends and the ridge, raising cost by $47 but saving countless nights of misery. Anchoring is the last challenge. How do you secure a hut to coral without concrete? The answer: steel stakes and tension cables. Scaled-up tent technology. Simple, reliable, genius. By June 1942, the War Production Board gives the green light. Mass production begins. Scherwerfeuern, the industrial miracle. 10 major steel companies retool overnight. Factories that once built water tanks now roll out huts. Every week, 1,500 units roll off the lines. Soon, 8,000 a month. Each hut ships flat. Panels nested like bowls. End walls packed between. Bolts boxed with illustrated manuals. Everything fits on one rail car. From Philadelphia and Chicago, trains roar west to San Francisco, San Diego, and Seattle, where Liberty ships wait to carry the shelters across the Pacific. Each ship carries 200 huts, enough to house 7,000 men. The system works with machine-like precision. Shelters built in Pennsylvania can be standing in New Guinea within 40 days. Naventyrkristutens, into battle, Guadalcanal, 1942. The first Quonset huts arrive on a beach still smoking from bombardment. Marines unload the flat-packed steel under artillery fire. Within 12 hours, they have 10 new buildings, maintenance shops for fighter planes. 3 days later, a Japanese bomb detonates 40 yards away. Palm trees shatter. Canvas tents vanish. The Quonsets? Still standing. Every man inside, alive. Field reports pour in. Structure intact. Shrapnel scars only. The Pacific jungles test them harder than any enemy. Humidity eats unprotected bolts. Fungus grows on the walls. Marines carve extra vents with tin snips just to breathe. Every field modification returns to Quonset Point, feeding continuous improvement. More louvers, better galvanization, stronger joints. The result, a building that learns from war. Jarrschuttertarifen, typhoons, ice, and fire. The huts spread everywhere, from the Philippines to Alaska. In the Arctic, they crack in sub-zero cold, until engineers switch to cold-rolled steel and add rubber gaskets. In North Africa, one hut takes a direct hit from an 88mm shell, twisted but standing, and in 1944, Typhoon Cobra slams the Philippines with 140 mph winds. 80% of base structures vanish. Of 43 Quonset huts, 39 survive. The report is blunt. Quonset huts intact, everything else gone. By 1945, more than 160,000 units have been built, enough to house 6 million men across every combat theater. The Verbians, victory, and a new purpose. When the war ends, America owns 170,000 Quonset huts scattered across 6 continents. No one knows what to do with them. Scrap them? Not a chance. They're too useful and too cheap. The War Assets Administration puts them up for sale, $1,000 to $2,500 each. At a time when housing shortages force families into chicken coops, the Quonset becomes an unlikely hero. Veterans buy them by the thousands. Entire neighborhoods of curved steel spring up. Roger Young Village in Los Angeles. Vetville near universities. Families add porches, paint them bright colors, cut windows into the sides. Some bury them halfway underground for insulation. Others connect several into one long home. What began as a wartime necessity becomes a post-war symbol of resilience, practical, affordable, and deeply American. Yerfurs, from churches to classrooms. Churches adopt them first, cheap, fast, and big enough for worship. In Levittown, Pennsylvania, a congregation holds services in a Quonset hut for 15 years before building a permanent church. Then schools follow. The baby boom hits, classrooms overflow, and a single Quonset offers instant space for 30 students. By 1950, more than 3,000 American schools teach under steel arches once meant for war. Small businesses move in too. Auto shops, warehouses, farms, everyone finds a use. No columns, no leaks, no nonsense. The Quonset becomes a permanent part of the landscape. Sterberbjörterers, an accidental icon. For decades, architects sneer, calling them ugly, temporary, utilitarian. But by the 1990s, historians see them differently. They're monuments to ingenuity, proof that design born in desperation can outlive the war that created it. Preservation groups begin restoring them. Some are declared historic landmarks, industrial cathedrals of corrugated steel, and the idea refuses to die. Echoes in the modern world. Disaster zones rediscover the same principles again and again. Haiti, 2010. Earthquake destroys Port-au-Prince. Relief agencies need shelter for hundreds of thousands. The solution? Arched, prefabricated steel and composite structures, direct descendants of the Quonset hut. Modern refugee housing units, RHUs, use snap-fit panels instead of bolts, insulation instead of bare metal. But the DNA is identical, curved, self-supporting, flat-packed, fast. 2 people can assemble one in 4 hours, almost exactly what the Navy's Seabees achieved in 1942. After Hurricane Katrina, engineers found that curved metal buildings survived when rectangular homes didn't. Wind flows over a curve. It smashes flat walls. Physics doesn't change. The Quonset proved that in 1942. Even today's tiny house movement borrows its soul. Small, efficient, and prefabricated, a minimalist echo of wartime innovation. Luxury architects reinvent the shape in glass and wood, calling it a modern design statement. But at its heart, it's still the Quonset. From Earth to Mars. The U.S. military never stopped using the design. Modern combat zones still deploy arch-style shelters. made of aluminum and Kevlar now, but built on the same principles. And beyond Earth, NASA's Mars habitat concepts use arched, prefabricated modules to resist dust storms and assemble easily on alien soil. The constraints are the same as in 1942: limited tools, extreme conditions, unskilled labor, maximum strength from minimum material. Different planet, same problem, same solution. Epilogue: The Genius of Simplicity. The Quonset Hut wasn't just a building, it was a lesson in design, in logistics, in human creativity under pressure, born from desperation after Pearl Harbor, perfected by engineers who slept beside their work, tested by storms, bombs, and time, and still standing 8 decades later. When humanity builds its first colony on another world, chances are the first shelter will look familiar. A simple steel arch. Born in a Rhode Island warehouse in the darkest days of World War II. Proof that sometimes the simplest curve can change history.